Hey y'all, this is Darren Van Dam, and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that connects you with the best movies to stream. And today we're going to be comparing the streaming services Screambox and Shudder, as well as some other alternatives for horror fans. So Screambox and Shudder are kind of the two leading brands in terms of horror-specific streaming services. Shudder really being kind of the standard, and Screambox maybe being the new kid on the block. This video is sponsored by Vessi, and I'll be telling you more about them later in the video, but for now, let's start off talking about Screambox and its benefits. So right off the bat, Screambox has the hottest horror movie of 2022, Terrifier 2. Now, if you haven't heard, this was one of the biggest box office surprises of the year. This movie raked in millions, despite it being a limited release. It was only in select theaters, and it kept coming back week after week. It was a cultural phenomenon. Everyone was talking about Terrifier 2.
The movie is called Terrifier 2.
Some who have seen Terrifier 2 say they passed out. Some even say they threw up. An ambulance was even called during one movie showing.
I'm sitting next to my wife. We love scary movies. And my wife turned to me and went, "Get tickets now."
The movie theater experience is back thanks to Terrifier 2.
It is included on Screambox right now, and honestly, I suspect this must be a deal that had been worked out prior because, again, Terrifier 2 is so hot, and it's really the only thing of interest on Screambox right now. So much so that it's probably worth getting a free trial just to check out that movie. But speaking of the trial period, Screambox does cost $4.99 a month, or you can opt for a $27 plan for the annual plan. But let's just take a quick look at their catalog, because honestly, there's not a lot here. I mean, yes, they have a lot of titles, but these are really off-brand things. Longtime subscribers know I watch a ton of movies, and I don't recognize most of these. In fact, as we scroll through the different genres here, there's only a few that stand out to me. And while they are the cheapest option, they're not cheap by much, and again, they don't have nearly as much to offer as Shudder does for just $5.99 a month. But if you want to know something that actually truly does scare me, it's wet socks. But wet socks are something I literally never have to worry about again, thanks to today's sponsor, Vessi. Vessis are comfortable, slick-looking sneakers that are 100% waterproof. Okay, so I've even got some loud socks on here, just so we can really make sure if they got wet. I've got a garden hose here. And completely dry all the way around. That's pretty amazing. And they come in a bunch of styles, but here's a closer look at mine. These are actually made from Dymatex, which is a dual climate knit material. That means they'll keep your feet cool in the summertime and warm and dry in the winter months. Go check out their early Black Friday sale by going to vessi.com/flickcon. And the first 100 shoes sold are also going to get a free pair of socks of your choosing when you use my code SOCKSFlickCon. And like I said, these are comfortable. I've not had them for very long, but I've been out in the rain multiple times. I've stepped in puddles and not had to worry about getting wet at all. They are fantastic shoes to keep by the door. So again, check out that early Black Friday sale by going to my link in the video description below and use my code SOCKSFlickCon to get a free pair of socks. It's a fantastic deal, but speaking of great stuff, let's get on with the rest of the video. As I mentioned, Shudder is only $5.99 a month, just $1 more than Screambox, and they have a ton of stuff to offer for that. Not only do they have a really great library with a bunch of fantastic cult classics and some really deep cuts, just really good horror movies that you can't find anywhere, they also have some pretty killer original content. Now, some of their original movies I find to be pretty terrible, but they do have some real gems. But they've also got original shows like Creepshow and The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, which is a personal favorite of mine. If you're a movie buff and you've never watched any of his content, I highly recommend it, and you can only watch it on Shudder, and technically one other place, which we will get to in a moment. They also currently have Mandy with Nicolas Cage, a personal favorite of mine. Deadstream is a really funny, wild, over-the-top found footage movie that I just watched this past Halloween. Psycho Gorman was a hysterical horror comedy from last year with a ton of practical effects. The Headhunter is also this really interesting little indie flick. It's a small movie, but Game of Thrones fans should really dig this one. And One Cut of the Dead is a Japanese cult classic horror comedy that every movie buff needs to see at least once, especially if you kind of geek out on the process of making movies. This is the movie for you. All great options to watch if you sign up for Shudder. Even if you just sign up for a free trial, definitely check out some of those gems that I mentioned. And as you can see, they really do have a bigger, better horror section than Netflix. So if you are a horror fan, meaning you consume horror content every month, maybe multiple times a month, Shudder is a really great way to supplement your other streaming services with plenty of horror options. But I said I had another trick up my sleeve with this video, and that is the fact that AMC Plus only costs $8.99 a month, and it includes everything you get with Shudder and a lot more. So AMC owns Shudder, they always have as far as I know, and for just $3 more, you get Shudder and you get access to everything on AMC Plus, which obviously includes everything The Walking Dead, and a bunch of other hit AMC shows. But in addition to that, AMC Plus also has a pretty killer library of movies. They also have the new Interview with the Vampire series, and a show that a lot of Americans don't know about, Gangs of London. If you were a fan of the Raid series, The Raid and The Raid 2, two of what I consider to be some of the best action movies created this century so far, then you are going to love Gangs of London. It's from the same director, Gareth Evans. So there's a ton of great fight sequences in the show, especially for a TV series, and it's an amazing gangster epic. It's got incredible performances. It's a top-rated show, and season 2 just started. So I highly recommend checking that show out if you're the least bit interested in signing up for AMC Plus. And it is worth noting that HBO Max has a pretty killer horror selection. It's Warner Brothers, so it's a lot of big budget horror movies for the most part, but they have great selections from every decade, including some of the best horror movies of all time, like The Exorcist and The Fly. They even have Barbarian, which is one of my favorite horror movies of 2022. I really enjoyed that one. It was definitely something different, but it's a brand spanking new release right there on HBO Max. Plus, HBO Max is just a really great streaming service to have, and they have a better horror selection than most of the other major ones. But that's the video. Thanks again to Vessi for sponsoring this episode, and I will keep making these as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this one, and you will see me on the next one.